Rumors about Ryan being romantically involved with the school's most beautiful girl eventually made their way to the teacher. He defended himself weakly, saying, "I'm not in a relationship. Just put in a good word for me with Mom when you get home." Then, my personal diary was misinterpreted and shared publicly, as if it were a love letter. The entire school mocked me, labeling me as a creep who had fallen for her own biological brother. My parents were summoned by the teacher. In the office, Ryan shockingly confessed to the false allegations. "Mom, I know I was wrong. I'll focus on my studies from now on," he said. Mom scolded me for being ungrateful and cast me out of the Ryan family. After that, I had to drop out of school and my future fell apart. I ended up working in a bubble tea shop. Once I overheard the school beauty holding Joey's hand and saying, "She's so pitiful, working at such a young age." Ryan scoffed and replied, "Our family took care of her for so many years. We owe her nothing." When I opened my eyes again, I saw them kissing in a secluded grove. Without hesitation, I took a photo and sent it to Mom. Furious, Mom was enraged. Ryan was her pride and joy, and she wouldn't let anyone jeopardize his future. The next day, she stormed into the school. "What's going on?" she demanded as soon as she arrived. "Why was the class monitor called out? Is it true he's in a relationship? Is he seeing Ivy, the school beauty?" Helen first caused a scene in the teacher's office before heading to class 1. Standing at the door in high heels and a fitted black skirt, she scanned the room. Ryan trailed behind her, looking uncomfortable. "Mom, this is school. Could you not make a spectacle of yourself?" he pleaded. "Be quiet. I'll deal with you later," Helen snapped. Some classmates exchanged confused looks, while others watched with interest. Helen's sharp eyes immediately landed on me, seated at the back of the class. "Luna, tell me who Ivy is," she demanded. All eyes turned to me. I was the Ryan family's adopted daughter, and Ryan was technically my brother. His piercing gaze carried a silent warning as he glared at me. It reminded me of the same look he had given me in my previous life when the rumors about his relationship reached the teacher. Back then, he had begged me to lie for him. "I'm not dating anyone," he had said. "If Mom asks, tell her I'm innocent." But to protect the person he loved, he threw me under the bus, admitting to the teacher that it was me who was romantically involved with him. That lie led to my expulsion from the family and destroyed my future. This time, I wasn't going to help him. I bit my lip and avoided speaking, shifting my gaze toward Ivy in the front row. I stammered, pretending to be unsure. Ivy's face turned pale, and she lowered her head, looking so pitiful that Ryan's heart ached. Helen quickly understood and approached Ivy with disdain. "So you're Ivy," Helen said coldly. "Let me make this clear. My son comes from a respectable family, excels in school, and has a promising future. As a girl, you should know how to conduct yourself and not lead him astray." Ivy bit her lip, her eyes red and brimming with tears. Ryan quickly stepped in to shield her. "Mom, you're going too far," he protested. Helen slapped him hard across the face. "How dare you talk back to me because of her? Do you think you're all grown up now? Without your father and me, you're nothing. You dare to be in a relationship at your age. If your father finds out, he'll break your legs." Helen then yanked Ivy up by the arm. Her perfectly made-up face contorted with anger. "With a face like this, you've already learned how to seduce men at such a young age. Let's go see your teacher and call your parents. I'd like to know how they raised you." Terrified at the mention of involving her parents, Ivy panicked. Ryan, please tell her. We're not in a relationship. I'm just your classmate. But Helen was unmoved. The incriminating photo I had sent already confirmed the truth. Desperate, Ivy shook Helen's hand off and pointed at me. It's her. Everyone in the class knows she likes Ryan. If anyone's in a relationship, it's them, not me, Ivy shouted. Helen immediately turned her attention to me, while Ryan frowned ever so slightly. I saw her diary once, Ivy continued. It's full of her feelings for Ryan. If you don't believe me, ask her to show it to you. My desk mate, Wilson, who often sucked up to Ivy, took her cue and pulled a pink diary from my desk. No, don't look, I cried, trying to grab it. My panicked reaction only confirmed Ivy's accusations to the class. Oh my God, does she actually like Ryan? Someone whispered. But he's her brother. Everyone knew Ryan was my brother, and I had always obeyed him and spoken highly of him. Some had even speculated that I might have an obsession with him, but they didn't know I was adopted by the Ryan family. Give it back, I pleaded. But Wilson handed the diary to Helen with a smug grin. Helen quickly flipped through the pages, her expression darkening as she read. Ivy watched me with a victorious glint in her eyes, until the next moment when Helen slapped her hard. You shameless brat! You dared to get involved with my son and even skipped classes with him. I'll deal with you. The class was stunned. Ivy picked up the diary in disbelief. As she read the contents, her face grew even paler. Students at the back crowded around to get a glimpse, some even snatching the diary to read aloud. February 23rd. I heard that the school beauty confessed to my brother, but I trust him. He wouldn't date anyone. February 28th. I saw him bring her breakfast. When did they get so close? March. The school beauty took my brother to skip class and told me not to tell. Should I let Mum know? His grades have dropped this month, and he asked me to lie about his test scores. I'm so worried. March 15th. My brother made me do her homework. He used to care so much about studying. What's changed? Bold classmates read the entries aloud, ignoring Ivy's pleas to stop. She looked as if she wanted to protest, but couldn't. In my past life, Wilson had been Ivy's devoted lackey. My habit of keeping a diary had allowed him to spread rumors about Ryan and Ivy throughout the school. I had watched helplessly as Ryan prioritized Ivy over everything, skipping classes, neglecting homework, and losing his academic focus. When I tried to intervene, he had dismissed me coldly. Luna, mind your own business, he'd snapped. The rumors grew until the head teacher summoned Ryan for a meeting. That same day, a page from my diary was published in class as a supposed love letter. Before Ryan returned, I was called to the office again. Luna, the teacher began sternly. Your responsibility as a student is to focus on your studies. Writing love letters not only disrupts you, but also affects others. But I didn't write any love letter, I protested. The teacher held up a familiar piece of paper. This letter was found in Ryan's desk. The teacher turned to Ryan. Tell me, did your grades drop because of a relationship? Before I could say anything, Ryan's cold voice rang out in the office. Teacher, we were wrong. We'll focus on studying from now on. It felt as though I'd been drenched with ice water. Helen's piercing gaze made me feel like a criminal. Our family raised you for so long, she sneered. Is this how you repay us? I must have been out of my mind to take you in. You're a curse and have ruined my son. From this moment on, you're no longer part of the Ryan family. Ryan stood silently nearby, watching me with indifference as Helen's words cut deep. Around us, students who had come to watch whispered and pointed. Finally, the teacher managed to diffuse the situation, and I was able to leave. But as I entered the classroom, I was met with a sea of stares, mocking, disgusted, and pitying. Can you believe it? She's in love with her own brother. That's so twisted. What's wrong with her? She's so quiet in class, but she's actually a total freak. Their words made my face pale as I returned to my desk. Lowering my head, I noticed something that froze me in place. The lock on my diary had been forced open, and it lay wide open among my books. In that moment, it felt like all the blood in my body had reversed its flow. I clenched my fist tightly and didn't dare look up. Wilson, who sat next to me, acted as though nothing had happened, standing beside Ivy with a smug grin. I had always been careful to lock my diary and place it securely in my desk, but last time I had forgotten. When I opened my eyes again in this new life, I replaced all the entries in my diary ahead of time. Seeing Wilson giving me the same questioning look as before, I calmly returned the diary to my desk without reacting. Hey Luna, you're still writing in a diary. What's in it that you're so eager to hide? Wilson asked, with the same mockery as in my previous life. I kept my head down and showed no emotion. I was just relieved that she wouldn't find anything interesting. Helen, still furious, dragged Ivy to the office again, with Ryan trailing behind, his expression dark and worried. The rest of the class followed eagerly, treating it like a show. Teacher Wong, Helen demanded angrily. You need to give me an explanation. My son is on track to attend a prestigious university. I won't let this girl ruin his future. You must separate them. If Ivy isn't removed from Class 4, transfer my son to Class 1, where the academic environment is better. Class 1 was the top-performing class in the grade, and admission was extremely selective. The matter eventually escalated to the dean. Refusing to call her parents, Ivy was ultimately forced to switch classes. Ryan returned to the classroom, looking dejected. When his eyes met mine, they burned with anger. Luna, why did you do this? He snapped. You sent those photos to Mum, didn't you? And that diary, did you write it on purpose for Mum to see? You're so vile. Just because I don't like you, you had to hurt Ivy? If you have a problem with me, why drag her into it? Are you happy now? Ryan's furious outburst left me feeling unexpectedly calm. Am I happy? I said with a bitter smile. Ryan, you saw it yourself. I tried to stop them from taking my diary, but Ivy insisted on grabbing it and reading it. She brought this on herself. Then, I added coldly, you know as well as I do that Ivy wanted to frame me first. I understand her need to protect herself, but why sacrifice me in the process? Does my life not matter? Ryan's jaw tightened and his expression flickered with guilt. He knew Ivy's tricks, but he still stood by her, as always. It was clear. When it comes to love, the one who suffers is the one who isn't chosen. He gritted his teeth and asked, was she wrong? Luna, can you honestly say you don't have feelings for me? So, he had known all along. I thought hearing him say it would make my heart ache, but the love I once had for him had vanished entirely after what happened in my previous life. Back then, he had abandoned me for Ivy, watched as I was thrown out of the Ryan family, and allowed my future to crumble. Now, when I looked at him, all I felt was hatred. I don't like you anymore, I said firmly. Not now, and not ever again. From that day on, Ryan seemed like a different person. He attended school on time, completed his homework diligently, and stopped going out during breaks, instead resting at his desk. Yet, despite his efforts, his grades continued to plummet. One day after school, he blocked me at the gate. "Luna, I know Mom asked you to keep an eye on me," he said coldly. "You'd better not report anything to her, or you'll regret it." It was obvious he was worried Helen might target Ivy again. His recent behavior was just a facade to protect her. "How touching," I replied with a smile. "Don't worry. I'm not interested in your affairs. Everything I've done was just self-defense. And a little payback." Ryan clenched his fists, but said nothing. At home, Helen greeted him warmly. "Ryan, you're back. Luna told me you did great on your last exam and made so much progress. I cooked your favorite dishes. Go wash up and join us for dinner." Ryan turned to me with a mix of surprise and suspicion. I smiled brightly. "Brother, let's eat." It was the first time I had called him brother since being reborn. Ryan snorted dismissively. "You made Ivy suffer so much. Do you think being nice to me will fix everything? We can never go back to how things were." He was right. There was no returning to the past. Not for me, not for Ryan, and not for Ivy. After Ivy's reputation as a sweet and innocent girl crumbled, and with her mediocre grades, no teacher wanted her in their class. She was eventually assigned to Class 11, notorious for its poor academic performance and rowdy students. One day, while walking home, I encountered Ivy in an alley. She had smoky makeup, a miniskirt, and a vest. Her seductive look, a stark contrast to her former delicate demeanor. Beside her stood a tall boy, roughly 1.8 meters, with a cigarette in his mouth and a tattoo on his arm. He looked like a thug. "Long time no see, Luna," Ivy sneered, her hatred palpable. "You've been doing well, haven't you? Even made it into the top 10. Feeling proud of yourself? In this life, I had worked tirelessly to change my fate and achieve my goals." Holding my report card, I felt relieved. Proud? Not exactly. I just earned it. Ivy's face twisted with rage. "I've suffered so much because of you. Why do you get to live so well? Why don't you just die?" Her outburst was almost uncontrollable. Sensing danger, I turned to leave, but she grabbed my ponytail. Turning back, I saw the boy's muscular arm, veins bulging. "Did I say you could leave?" Ivy slapped me hard across the face. The sting made my vision blur, but no one noticed the madness flickering in my eyes. Calmly, I raised my hand and struck her back. The boy grabbed me by the neck, his grip tightening, then kicked me in the stomach. The searing pain consumed me, and just as I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I noticed several police officers in uniform approaching. Collapsing to the ground, I glanced at Ivy's panicked face and curled my lips into a vindictive smile. The intense pain in my body seemed to lessen in that instant. Earlier in the afternoon, a classmate I got along with had invited me to a small snack bar at the end of an alley. Knowing Ivy would try to stir up trouble, as she had in my past life when this same classmate was threatened by her, I had called the police in advance. In my class, I barely had any friends. This classmate was one of the few I shared a decent relationship with. Sure enough, the next morning, the police arrived at school and informed Class 11's teacher about Ivy's detention. In the office, I let my tears flow, recounting the incident where Ivy had rummaged through my desk. It was during physical education, about a week after my rebirth, I sobbed. I saw Wilson leave, and then Ivy sneaked back into the classroom. I followed them and witnessed everything. How they rifled through my desk and broke the lock on my combination diary. I turned to Teacher Wong. The surveillance cameras must have captured it. You can check the footage. With my face swollen from crying and the redness on my cheeks from Ivy's slap, I looked utterly pitiful. Ivy's recent misdeeds had earned her little sympathy from the staff. The school decided not only to detain her for 20 days and mark her with a criminal record, but also to publicly criticize her before ultimately expelling her. Her life took a downward spiral in this timeline. When Ryan found out, he seemed frozen in place. "Luna," he snarled, "what have you done this time? I told you to stop scheming, or I won't let you off." His bloodshot eyes burned with rage, probably from learning about Ivy's fate. I shrugged nonchalantly. I didn't do anything. She brought this on herself. Ryan stormed over and grabbed my collar, causing it to scrape against the wound on my neck. Though it stung, I didn't flinch. "If you're so concerned, why not go see her yourself?" I said calmly. "She should be at the Internet Cafe on Hong Street right now." Recalling the location sent by the private detective I had hired, I added, "She must feel pretty helpless right now." Ryan froze, his grip loosening. Then he turned and stormed out of the school. Raising my voice so the entire class could hear, I shouted, "Brother! School isn't over yet. Aren't you going to class?" But Ryan's mind was entirely consumed by thoughts of Ivy. He didn't even pause. At the Internet Cafe, Ivy sat on the lap of a tattooed man, her head tilted back as they kissed passionately. Her hair was styled in loose curls, and despite her tear-streaked face, she exuded a tragic allure. When Ryan arrived and saw the scene through the doorway, his eyes turned red with fury. He charged inside, pulling Ivy off the man and landing blow after blow on the tattooed stranger. Meanwhile, I watched the footage sent by the detective. Saving the videos and photos, I sent a message. "No need to follow them anymore. I'll transfer the payment soon." It was time to put an end to this chapter. Ryan skipped school the entire day, causing the teachers considerable worry. Teacher Wong even left the campus to search for him, eventually finding him in the last place anyone would have expected. Unsurprisingly, Helen paid a visit to Teacher Wong's office soon after. "My son has been so well behaved recently," she protested. "How could he possibly skip class? I even asked Luna to supervise him daily." "Teacher Wong, you must be mistaken." Letting out a long sigh, Teacher Wong reluctantly handed her his phone, which displayed photos I had anonymously posted on the school forum. Although I deleted them within minutes, many people had already saved the images. The pictures clearly showed Ryan, Ivy, and the tattooed man together, along with shots of their brawl. Helen's face darkened as she stared at Ivy in the photos. "That little... Again, how shameless can she be, clinging to my son like this? Teacher Wong, where is she now? I need to teach her a lesson. She must be expelled. She's ruining the school's reputation. Look at her. She doesn't even look like a student." Teacher Wong, growing tired of her tirade, pinched the bridge of his nose. "She's already been expelled," he replied. Left with no outlet for her anger, Helen turned on Ryan instead. "Ryan, what did you promise me? It's only been a few days, and you're already skipping classes and fighting. Do you want to drive me mad?" she yelled before slapping him hard. "Look at Luna. She studies so hard, and gets excellent grades. You're my son. Why can't you follow her example instead of fooling around with that femme? Is she worth throwing away your future and your family for? Your father and I have sacrificed so much for you. Tears streamed down her face as she ranted, oblivious to Ryan standing motionless, his eyes devoid of life as he endured her scolding. I watched the spectacle unfold from the office door before quietly leaving. Ryan was publicly criticized by the school for skipping classes, spending time at the internet cafe and fighting. It all felt surreal. Though I had achieved my revenge, an inexplicable sadness lingered in my heart. One day, as I returned home to the Ryan family, I found Ryan leaning against the doorframe. His eyes were cold, and his voice was lifeless. Luna, was this your plan all along? You've destroyed her and me. Are you satisfied now? I ignored him and turned to leave. Behind me, his voice cracked. Luna, have you forgotten your surname is Joe? Our family raised you for years, and this is how you repay us. With cold-hearted revenge. You're just a stray dog we took in. What are you so proud of? If I wanted to, I could kick you out anytime. His words made my heart clench, flooding my mind with memories of my previous life. Back then, after being cast out of the Ryan family without a degree, I had no choice but to work at a bubble tea shop. One day, Ryan and Ivy walked in, holding hands and looking radiant. "Isn't this Luna?" Ivy said, clinging to Ryan's arm. "Poor thing, working so young." Ryan's gaze grew even colder as he looked at me. "The Ryan family took her in for years. We don't owe her anything," he said flatly. "If it weren't for us, she'd still be an orphan who couldn't afford school, probably struggling to survive." They were right. The Ryan family owed me nothing. But Ryan, you are the one who owes me. From the moment I entered the family as an adopted daughter, Ryan, the cherished only son, refused to accept me. And later, when my feelings for him were exposed, he despised me even more now. Just being around me seemed to disgust him. Although there had never been any affection between us, we had still lived under the same roof as siblings for years. "Ryan, you're the one without a conscience," I thought. Turning to meet his gaze, I said calmly, "We're even now. Whatever debt I owe the Ryan family, I'll repay it someday." Ryan let out a sarcastic laugh, raising his eyebrows. "After your baseless revenge, it's my turn to get back at you." I didn't flinch at his words. In my past life, I might have been terrified and unable to sleep. But after dying once, I no longer feared anything. "Just say it," I urged. With visible reluctance, Helen gritted her teeth and said, "Luna, you know Ryan hasn't been himself lately. He's been under a lot of stress." She pulled a medical report from her bag and handed it to me. "I consulted a psychologist, and they said Ryan is showing mild symptoms of the depression." This revelation caught me off guard, but I kept my expression neutral. Helen continued, "His grades have dropped significantly, and he told me that seeing you only makes him feel more pressured. He says he can't sleep at night. It's all my fault. I used to compare the two of you constantly." She sighed and added, "I've transferred 100,000 yuan to your account. You'll be an adult soon, and this money should be enough to support you until the college entrance exams are over. Over the years, we haven't owed you anything. Ryan is my only son. I hope you can understand." Helen gently patted my hand as she spoke. I didn't get angry or cry. I quietly accepted the money and went to my room to pack my belongings. In truth, I had already been planning to leave. After everything I had done, I no longer felt like I belonged in this family. I had even looked into rental properties near the school and saved a landlord's contact information. The rent was affordable, but at the time, I had spent all my savings on hiring a private investigator and couldn't afford to move. Now, with the money in hand, I contacted the landlord and secured the room I wanted. Standing on the roadside with 2 suitcases, I waited for a taxi. Ryan suddenly appeared beside me. "Luna," he said coldly, "if you apologize to Ivy and beg me, I'll let it go. Mom will continue to let you stay with us. See, I'm not as heartless as you." I forced a smile and asked, "Ryan, is your depression real or just an act?" Summoning my courage, I added, "Then how about we buy matching rings? Mom asked about it last time. Why don't you choose?" Even after 2 lifetimes, the person standing before me felt like a stranger. The apartment I rented was small, just 1 bedroom and a living room. It was cramped but clean. I spent the entire afternoon unpacking and cleaning until everything was in order. By the time the sun set, I was exhausted. I collapsed onto the tiny sofa, watching the sunset's glow illuminate the room. Helen's parting words echoed in my mind. "You're grown up now. From this moment on, you'll live on your own." Hugging my knees, I curled up and let the tears fall. Despite getting a second chance at life, I was still completely alone. After crying, I pulled out a stack of practice exams and threw myself into studying. At least this time, I still had the chance to take the college entrance exams and go to university. A bright future was still within reach. And with only a few months left until the exams, I couldn't afford to lose focus. The building I lived in had a back entrance that led to an alley. To save time, I often used it. The alley was dimly lit, with several broken streetlights, making it feel remote and eerie at night. One evening after my self-study session, I noticed a figure following me as I walked through the alley. My heart raced, and I quickened my pace, suspecting Ivy might have sent someone to retaliate against me, but nothing happened. I made it safely to the back entrance and entered the community. Still feeling uneasy, I retraced my steps and hid near the security booth. Under the dim glow of a street lamp, I saw the man again. He stood nearby, staring in the direction I had gone. Something about him felt familiar. For the next several days, I kept seeing him. After realizing he didn't intend to harm me, I decided to confront him. "Who are you and why are you following me?" I demanded, stepping into his path. When I finally got a good look at his face, my eyes widened in shock. The man smiled warmly. "Little sister," he said gently, "this alley is too dark and dangerous. You should use the front entrance from now on." In my previous life, this man had often visited the bubble tea shop where I worked. At first, he was just a frequent customer, but later he began ruffling my hair without permission. I had found him intrusive and suspected he was a creep. I pursed my lips. "I don't know you, and my affairs are none of your concern." For safety reasons, I stopped using the alley, but the man kept lingering nearby. One rare weekend, I treated myself to a bowl of beef noodles at a shop near the school. While I was slurping my noodles, the man appeared and sat across from me. "Hi, I'm Kevin," he said casually. "Mind if I sit here? How are the noodles? I noticed you don't eat out often, so this place must be good." He continued without waiting for a response. "Why did you move out to live on your own? Is it because it's close to school? Which building and floor are you on?" I put down my chopsticks and studied him. He was tall, well-dressed in a casual windbreaker, and looked to be in his mid-20s. His refined demeanor didn't match the behavior of a troublemaker. Could he have a crush on me? Why do you know so much about me? I asked, narrowing my eyes. What do you want? Kevin hesitated, then fell silent. Trying to maintain my composure, I coughed lightly and said, I'm still a minor. My only focus right now is the college entrance exams. I'm not interested in relationships, so don't get any ideas. Kevin looked startled. His expression caught me off guard, and I felt a flush of embarrassment. You've misunderstood, he finally said. I just noticed you live alone and thought it might be unsafe. Where's your family? In my previous life, I had been shy and withdrawn, the type to fade into the background. How could I have been so confident as to think this handsome man liked me? Flustered, I stood and left the noodle shop. But as I returned to my building, I realized I had forgotten to pay. Mortified, I turned back. Kevin was waiting by the community entrance. He smiled softly. Don't worry. I've already taken care of it. It seemed I had grown accustomed to Kevin's constant presence. He was like an older brother, kind and gentle. Although I still avoided giving him too much attention, his presence made me feel more at ease. At the very least, I didn't have to dwell on unnecessary thoughts anymore. 2 days before the college entrance exam, I went to a stationery shop with my backpack to buy the supplies I needed. As I turned a corner on an empty street, Ivy suddenly appeared and snatched the pencil case from my hand. Give it back, I shouted. Before I could grab it, the pencil case fell to the ground, scattering its contents. Seeing my admission ticket in Ivy's hand, panic surged through me. I lunged at her in desperation, trying to reclaim it. Ivy, however, stepped back dramatically and fell to the ground. Luna! A familiar, angry voice called out behind me. Ryan appeared, grabbing my wrist. Hasn't she suffered enough because of you? Why can't you just leave her alone? Ignoring him, I turned my head to see Ivy standing a meter away, my admission ticket in one hand and a lighter in the other. Her face twisted with fury. I won't let you have it easy, she said, her voice dripping with madness. Struggling against Ryan's grip, I screamed in despair. Stop it! Finally realizing the gravity of the situation, Ryan frowned and turned toward Ivy, trying to stop her. Just as the flame was about to touch the edge of my ticket, it was snatched away in one swift motion. Ivy spun around to see a man standing behind her. Who are you? Mind your own business and give it back, she demanded. When I saw Kevin, relief washed over me. His voice, usually gentle, was now sharp with anger. Are you Luna? Is this yours? If so, it's not going back to her. Ivy's face flushed, though she tried to act defiant. Her bravado faltered in front of the older man. This is between Luna and me. It's none of your business. Kevin's tone turned colder. What if I make it my business? Ryan stepped forward to shield Ivy. The ticket wasn't destroyed, so just let it go. Don't make things harder for her. Taking the ticket from Kevin's hand, I remained silent. Inside, I felt utterly disillusioned with Ryan. His words didn't hurt anymore. They simply confirmed what I had always known. Kevin, however, frowned and asked pointedly, Whose brother are you? Your sister is being bullied, and you side with a stranger. Well done. At that moment, I finally spoke. I'm no longer part of the Ryan family. He's not my brother. Kevin's expression grew darker. Ryan, equally irritated, glared at him. Who even are you? Why do you care so much? Kevin pulled me closer, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. I'm her brother. Her biological brother, he said firmly. emphasizing the last words. My hand froze mid-motion as I was about to push him away. Even as Kevin led me to the hospital, I felt dazed. His words echoed in my mind. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier. I was afraid it might affect your college entrance exams. I thought you were living well with the Ryan family. It's my fault. I should have come for you sooner. I'm late, Luna. I hope it's not too hard for you to accept." He continued gently. "If you don't believe me, we can get a DNA test done right now." Perhaps, because I had longed for familial affection, I agreed to go with him. When the results came back, I stared at the report, stunned. It all made sense now. The way he followed me in secret. The kindness he always showed me. Kevin was truly my biological brother. I opened my mouth to speak but couldn't find the words. Kevin pulled me into a hug, his voice soothing. "I know everything, Luna. It's okay. Your brother is here now. It's all my fault. I didn't take care of you properly and let you get lost." He gently patted my back as I clung to him, burying my face in his shoulder and sobbing. For the first time, I realized I wasn't alone. I had a real family, a home. Before the exam, Helen called. "Ryan was beaten up and sent to the hospital," she said. "Do you want to visit him?" Keeping my focus on the test paper in front of me, I replied calmly, "No. I have an exam tomorrow." Inwardly, I wasn't surprised. In my previous life, Ryan had also been hospitalized after being attacked by the tattooed thug who liked the school beauty. This time, the event happened earlier, likely because I had altered the timeline. In my past life, I foolishly went to see him and lost my life as a result. This time, I simply wanted to live. The 2-day exam passed quickly. When I exited the school gates, I immediately spotted Kevin in the crowd, holding a large bouquet of roses and waving at me. "Luna, your brother's here!" he called out. I ran toward him, shy but excited. People around us cast envious glances my way. "Brother," I said softly, holding the flowers he handed me. They smelled wonderful and were absolutely stunning. Kevin smiled warmly. "Now that the exams are over, I'll take you home to meet Mom and Dad." Hearing this, I felt an indescribable warmth. I had a brother, and parents too. It felt like a dream, a comforting warmth surrounding me. "Mom and Dad are in the neighboring city," Kevin explained. "I haven't told them about you yet." His words made me feel a little disappointed. Noticing my expression, Kevin pinched my nose playfully. "What are you thinking about now? Mom and Dad miss you very much. Just like me, they never stopped looking for you. But after what happened when we were kids, I always felt guilty and didn't have the courage to face them. So when we go home, my dear sister, you have to put in a good word for me," Kevin teased. Having carried the burden of guilt for years, Kevin had stayed away from home, avoiding his parents' pained expressions. Now that he had reunited with his sister, he knew it was time to set aside those feelings and return. Hearing his words, I felt a twinge of sadness. "Of course I will, brother," I replied softly. Kevin gazed at me, his gentle sister, and couldn't help but feel a mix of helplessness and amusement. "So obedient now," he said with a playful smile. "When you were little, you used to fight and play with me every day." But I had only vague memories of my early years. The details of how I interacted with my family had long faded from my mind. "Well, I like this version of you," Kevin said, rubbing my head affectionately. "With such a sweet and lovely sister, how can I not spoil you?" Suddenly, a memory from my past life came rushing back. Kevin had also ruffled my hair like this when I worked at the milk tea shop. Did he recognize me then? The thought made me sentimental. In my previous life, I had harbored resentment toward Ryan. Yet when I heard he was hospitalized, I couldn't stop myself from wanting to visit him. That impulsive decision led to a car accident. If only I had lived a few days longer, I might have recognized my brother. As Kevin and I walked side by side, I turned my head and noticed Ryan and Helen standing nearby. My expression instantly turned cold. Kevin, however, smiled warmly. "Come on, let's say hello. We're leaving soon. This might be the last time we see them." In a quiet coffee shop, Helen and Ryan sat across from us. Helen looked worn down, her eyes dull and lifeless. With Ryan's grades already poor, missing the first 2 college entrance exams due to his hospitalization only worsened his situation. Despite everything, Helen didn't reprimand him like before. As her son battled depression, she had lost the sharpness that once defined her. Kevin reached into his pocket and handed Helen a card. "Miss Sue," he said, "there's 2 million yuan in this account. Consider it repayment for raising my sister all these years." Helen hesitated, wanting to refuse, but Kevin's insistence left her no choice. "We'll be leaving this area," he continued. "My sister won't be able to support you and Mr. Z in the future. If this amount isn't sufficient, let me know, and I can provide more." Helen waved her hand dismissively. "It's enough, more than enough," she said with a bittersweet smile. "She's a good child. It's me, as a mother, who let her down." At that moment, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. A deep breath escaped me, and it was as though a heavy burden had finally been released. Ryan suddenly interjected, his voice sharp. "You're leaving?" Kevin nodded. "Our hometown is in a nearby city. My sister was likely abducted and brought here. Now that I've found her, we're returning." Ryan's expression darkened. "No wonder you left the Ryan family so easily. You already knew you had your real family waiting for you." His voice dripped with bitterness. "Do you really think a bit of money can repay my mother for raising you all these years?" Before I could respond, Helen spoke up, her tone firm and scolding. "Ryan, stop it. If it hadn't been for Luna saving you back then, you might have been kidnapped by traffickers too. I only adopted her because she saved you. The money is enough. We don't owe her anything." Ryan stared at his mother, stunned, unable to process her words. Hand in hand, Kevin and I left the coffee shop. Helen's voice echoed in my mind. "When we visited your grandmother's house, you got lost. I searched everywhere but couldn't find you. Luna saw the trafficker who had taken you and saved you. She was just a child herself, but so smart and brave. She was abducted and brought here when she was younger. After being adopted by a family, they abandoned her when they had their own child, and she ended up in the welfare home. One day, she saw you on the road, lost and scared. She didn't know how to get home and was terrified of being caught by bad people again. So, she brought you back to the welfare home instead. That's how we got the call to come pick you up. I was so grateful to her and heartbroken for her. She was just a little girl with no one to call family. That's why I adopted her." I couldn't fully describe my emotions. A strange sense of relief washed over me. "See, Ryan," I murmured to myself, "I don't owe you anything." Wiping away my tears, I smiled. "Brother, I didn't expect I was so brave as a child, taking on bad guys and all. What a hero I was." Kevin's eyes brimmed with sadness, though he forced a smile. My Luna is amazing. Later, I returned to my real home. My mother was a hair salon owner, my father university professor, and Kevin was the chairman of a medical company. Seeing them again brought a flood of childhood memories I thought I'd forgotten. That night, after hours of laughing and crying, I fell asleep, overwhelmed but content. In my dream, I lay on a pink princess bed while Kevin stood beside me, carefully adjusting the blanket. The light was bright, and I squinted as tears welled up. "Brother," I choked out, "is this a dream?" Kevin's eyes were red as he gently wiped my tears. "No, Luna, this isn't a dream. You're home." I couldn't help but smile as I drifted into a sweet sleep. By my bedside, Kevin stared at me, a mix of relief and disbelief in his eyes. How could this be a dream? He thought. This is what I've yearned for all along. Kevin's perspective, when I was reincarnated. I couldn't believe it. I returned to the milk tea shop, asking the clerks if a girl named Luna worked there. They said no. I waited outside her school daily, hoping to see her. The moment I finally caught sight of her, I accepted the truth. I had been given another chance. In my past life, the first time I saw Luna, I noticed the faint scar on her wrist. It was the same one she had gotten as a child, scratched by a branch while I carried her. I knew then she was my sister, but she wasn't living well. She'd dropped out of school and worked odd jobs. I offered to support her studies, but she refused, distrustful of me. I couldn't reveal the truth outright, for fear of scaring her away. Instead, I stayed close, approaching her slowly. Just as I finally resolved to tell her, she asked for leave. Before I could see her again, I got the devastating news. She'd been in a car accident. When I saw her lifeless body in the hospital, unclaimed and alone, it felt like the world had ended. I buried her and climbed Tarnung Mountain, seeking solace from the monks. But my prayers went unanswered. I drank heavily, plagued by the thought of her voice accusing me. "Brother, why didn't you recognize me sooner?" When I opened my eyes again, I had gone back in time. This time, I wouldn't lose her again.